Okay, so just when you think you've kind of got a handle on this AI world, everything seems to shift again.
It really does, doesn't it? Constantly evolving.
Yeah, and today we're really diving into something potentially massive. The renegotiation happening right now between OpenAI and Microsoft. High stakes stuff.
Oh, definitely. This isn't just, your average corporate negotiation. What comes out of this could seriously change how AI gets developed, who gets to use it,
Mm-hmm.
even how it's governed. It feels pretty pivotal.
Absolutely pivotal. And look, to really understand what's happening, we've dug into reports from the Financial Times, other key outlets tracking these talks.
Good sources.
Yeah. Our mission here really is to unpack the main issues, figure out what both OpenAI and Microsoft are actually after, and, give you a clearer sense of where this might all be heading. We'll pull out the key stuff for you.
Sounds good. Where should we start? The beginning of the partnership.
Yeah, let's do that. Where did this whole thing even come from?
Okay, so cast your mind back to 2019. That's when Microsoft first jumped in with a pretty significant billion-dollar investment in OpenAI.
$1 billion back then, yeah, that was a big deal.
It was a bold move, showed they saw the potential early on, and then later they piled on even more, something like another $13 billion.
Wow, okay. And the structure was a bit different, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, kind of a hybrid setup. They had this for-profit arm, but it was technically serving a nonprofit mission. Interesting structure.
Right, that dual thing. And what was in it for each of them back then? It seems like it worked well for both, initially anyway.
Oh, absolutely. Microsoft got, early access to OpenAI's models, which were becoming state-of-the-art. Huge strategic plus for them.
And OpenAI.
Well, they got the cash, obviously, which was crucial. And maybe just as important, they got access to Microsoft's computing power, Azure. They needed that infrastructure badly for the R&D.
Makes sense. Okay, so flash forward to now. The whole AI scene looks completely different. What actually triggered the need to renegotiate? It wasn't like things are falling apart, were they?
No, not at all. The partnership's been, by most accounts, very successful. But the big change is OpenAI itself. It just exploded.
The valuation, right?
Exactly. We're talking, around $260 billion now? That's just a different universe compared to when they started.
Yeah, that fundamentally changes their negotiating position, I imagine.
Completely. They don't need the money in the same way.
Yeah.
So the power balance shifts, right? They can push harder for terms they want, more control, better equity split. Plus, you hear talk about a potential IPO.
Ah, an IPO. Okay, yeah, that definitely forces a rethink. The original deal probably never envisioned dealing with public markets and all that complexity.
Precisely. And, those original terms, they had a shelf life. They were set before this whole generative AI boom really took off. So they're either expiring or just. They don't fit the reality of 2024, 2025 AI. Things had to adapt.
So where are the main sticking points then? What are the big areas of tension in these talks?
Well, there are a few key areas. Let's start with maybe the most fundamental term, equity and capital. Microsoft put in billions.
Yeah.
Right? So understandably, they want to see that translate into a bigger ownership stake in OpenAI's for-profit side, which is now incredibly valuable.
Makes sense from their perspective. But OpenAI is pushing back.
Yeah, the FT specifically called this out as a major hurdle. OpenAI apparently feels Microsoft's asking for too much equity, potentially diluting their own control, their future upside. It's a classic negotiation point, really.
Right. And then there's the intellectual property, the IP. The original deal gave Microsoft a lot of rights there, didn't it?
It did. Pretty extensive commercial usage rights, exclusive ones, in fact, for OpenAI's models, plus a revenue-sharing deal.
But now OpenAI wants more flexibility.
Exactly. They've grown. They see opportunities everywhere. They want more control over their own tech to pursue different partnerships, different applications. They want to diversify beyond just Microsoft.
And that's causing some friction internally, too, I read, between the actual teams.
Yeah, reports suggest there's been some tension there between the OpenAI folks and Microsoft's own AI teams over how the tech is used and shared. It's not just high-level strategy. It gets down to the working level, too.
Interesting. Okay, and what about this AGI clause that keeps coming up? What's the deal with that?
Ah, the AGI clause.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, actually. AGI, artificial general intelligence, that's the hypothetical point where AI gets, human-like smarts across the board.
Right, the sci-fi future stuff.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
But they put a clause about it in the original deal.
Yeah.
It basically says if OpenAI develops AGI, they can revisit the terms of the Microsoft agreement.
Really? That's quite forward-thinking.
It is. But now the reports say Microsoft is trying to sort of limit that clause or change it. They probably want to make sure they still have significant influence, even if AGI happens.
So they don't want the rule book thrown out entirely if AGI arrives.
That seems to be the logic, yeah. It highlights a potential difference in view, maybe. Microsoft sees it perhaps as just more advanced AI, while OpenAI might see it as something totally game-changing that requires rethinking everything.
Okay, that's a big one. What about how OpenAI itself is structured? There was talk about becoming a public benefit corporation, governance changes.
Right, another complex layer.
Yeah.
So OpenAI was planning to shift its commercial side into a public benefit corporation, a PBC.
Which means
It's a legal structure where a company commits to a public benefit alongside making profits. For OpenAI, it's probably about balancing making money with their mission of, safe and beneficial AI, trying to keep that ethical core while still bringing in investment. The idea was maybe to have a cleaner split between the nonprofit board and the for-profit business.
but that hit roadblocks, regulatory issues.
Exactly. They ran into scrutiny. Regulators in Delaware, California had questions, so they've had to rethink and adjust those plans. Now it looks like the nonprofit board will keep overall control, but they're still trying to figure out how to integrate the capitalization, the investment side. We also saw Sam Altman step back from a big restructuring project recently. It just shows how tricky these fundamental shifts are.
Yeah, it really sounds like deep down there might be different visions for the future here. Microsoft, the established software giant, versus OpenAI with maybe a more open, idealistic view.
I think that's a fair way to put it. Microsoft, naturally, wants to secure long-term access to this key technology to bake it into all their products, their whole ecosystem. That's their business model.
Standard big tech playbook.
Right. Whereas OpenAI talks a lot about broader access, responsible development, strategic independence. That desire for an ethical path, ensuring AI benefits everyone, seems to be a real driver for them wanting more autonomy.
And we're seeing actual moves from OpenAI that point towards that independence, right? Like the Stargate thing.
Oh yeah, Stargate. That's their plan to build their own massive computing infrastructure, a supercomputer, essentially. That's a huge signal they want to be less reliant on others, namely Microsoft Azure, for that critical compute power down the road.
A massive undertaking.
Massive. And beyond that, look at their new partnerships. They're teaming up with SoftBank in Japan, with Oracle's here in the U.S. It's clear they're trying to diversify their relationship.
Spreading their bets.
Exactly. And you see changes in their management, too, bringing in people like Fidji Simo, Sarah Fryer, Brad Lightcap's role evolving. It looks like a company gearing up for a new chapter, one with potentially more independence.
Okay, but Microsoft isn't just sitting back and watching this happen. They're still integrating OpenAI tech heavily, but also doing their own thing.
Absolutely not sitting back. They're pushing ahead, full steam, integrating OpenAI models into Copilot, into everything. And they're still providing that essential Azure cloud power that OpenAI relies on right now.
Yeah, forget that.
Definitely not. But crucially, Microsoft is also developing its own impressive AI models, like the Phi 3 series. They're building their own capabilities too, ensuring they aren't solely reliant on OpenAI long-term either. It's a two-way street in terms of hedging bets.
So bringing it all together, where does this leave us? What are the likely outcomes here? It feels like a real fork in the road.
Yeah, it does. Look, the most likely outcome, and probably what both sides actually want deep down, is some kind of revised deal, a rebalancing act.
They don't want a complete divorce.
Probably not. The collaboration has been too beneficial for both.
Mm-hmm.
But the terms of that collaboration, the power balance within it, that's what's really up for grabs.
Okay, so scenario one. Microsoft gets a stronger, more locked-in deal. What does that mean for the wider AI world?
Well, if Microsoft secures really strong long-term access, maybe more equity, it could definitely cement their dominance, especially in the B2B, the enterprise AI space. They'd have preferential access to arguably the leading models.
And the flip side, if OpenAI manages to get more autonomy, more freedom to partner elsewhere.
Then you could see a more open, maybe more competitive AI landscape emerge. If OpenAI can partner more freely with, say, companies that compete with Microsoft Azure, like AWS or Google Cloud, or work more closely with other AI players like Anthropic, that could really shake things up. More competition, potentially faster innovation across the board.
It's like that band analogy you sometimes hear.
Yeah, exactly. The band signs early with a label, gets big, then wants to renegotiate to own their music or release it differently. OpenAI is kind of in that position with its core AI technology.
So it's becoming less about just who has the best model and more about who controls how it's used and distributed.
That's absolutely key. This whole negotiation really underscores that. The future fight in AI isn't just about model performance, it's about the governance, the access, the distribution channels. Who calls the shots on how this powerful tech gets deployed?
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. Summing up our deep dive here. OpenAI and Microsoft are at this really critical point in their relationship.
Driven mainly by OpenAI's incredible growth and its future ambitions, maybe even an IPO.
Right, leading to these really tough talks over the fundamentals, equity, IP rights, how the whole thing is governed going forward.
And both sides have strong reasons for their positions, and frankly, both have significant leverage. It's a complex negotiation.
And for you, listening, why does this matter? Well, as we've said, the outcome here is likely going to ripple outwards. It'll shape how accessible these advanced AI tools become, who controls them, and that could impact, countless industries and probably aspects of our daily lives, too.
Definitely. It's not just tech industry inside baseball.
Not at all. So maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. Seeing this push and pull, this tension between collaborating and competing in AI, does it make you wonder how we even define partnership in a field moving this fast?
That's a great question. What does a successful long-term partnership even look like when the technology and the players are evolving so rapidly?
Yeah, and what does this power struggle really tell us about where AI influence might end up? Concentrated in a few hands or maybe more distributed than we think? Something to chew on.